it was pretty dangerous in the crowd at Winterland because all these like football player types from the suburbs had come there not because they cared about the Sex Pistols. They thought the Sex Pistols were a joke and they were just there to cause trouble. And so you'd have these big burly guys just ramming through the audience and just banging into people and knocking people over.
Michael Goldberg, this is your third episode on the Booked on Rock podcast. How you doing, Michael? Good to see you again.
Good. Yeah, good to see you as well. Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. I always talk about when people say, "Do you have any recommended books?" And I always bring up Wicked Game. Now, this is your 2022 book, The True Story of Guitarist James Calvin Wilsey. That is one of the best books I've ever read.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Amazing book. So now you're back to chat about another great book on your career as a photographer. Let's talk about your book, which is, I believe it's out now. Is it correct? Jukebox?
No, it's going to be out basically by the end of July.
Okay.
So people can pre-order it right now from the publisher is Hozak Records and Books. And, if they're interested, they just need to go, they could go to the Hozak website. We could talk about that at the end of this if you want.
Definitely. I also want to mention too, Addicted to Noise. That's the other book that I had you on for too. That's another great book people can check out too. So on this one, Jukebox, tell us about, I'm interested in when you start taking photos, when your love of photography started, because you mentioned it in the book that this goes back to when you were a kid. And there's also a great photo of Jim Morrison in the book where that's the first big time photo that you took, and you're only 13 years old. So take us back to the beginning.
I was 13, about to turn 14. And there was this, what turns out to be the first rock festival in the United States, maybe in the world, happened on Mount Tamalpais in Marin County. And it was a 2-day festival, and they had the Jefferson Airplane, the Byrds, Captain Beefheart, a whole bunch of other bands played there. And one of the headliners was The Doors. And The Doors had a huge hit with their first single, Light My Fire, back then. And I was just a major Doors fan. So I was very excited, at age 13, that I was going to be able to see this band perform. And I brought my Brownie camera with me and took some pictures of Jim Morrison. And I was able to get close to the stage and got a pretty cool shot. I mean, I also got pictures of Ray Manzarek, the keyboard player. But I included the Jim Morrison photograph in the book because I think it's a good photograph. And I also, I talk a little bit about about doing photography, in my introduction to the book. And so I thought it would be nice for people who read that to see essentially the first photograph of a rock musician that I took. As it turned out, that same summer, I also ended up, things were really different back then. You could often just walk backstage when they were at these outdoor events. And so they had an outdoor concert happening in San Rafael, California, McNears Beach, and the Youngbloods, who had their big hit with Get Together, were playing, and the Sop with Camel, who had big hit with Hello, Hello, they were playing. And so I just walked sort of into the back area behind the stage, and who's there but Phil Lesh of the Grateful Dead. And so I asked him if I could take his picture, and he was fine with it. I took a couple of portraits of him. And then I took a portrait of Peter Kramer, who was the the singer in the Sop with Camel, and I included those photos in the book as well.
Is that the guy who's on the flute
my,
there? Who's on the flute? Is that?
yeah, that's Kramer from
Okay.
the Sop with Camel, and yeah, that was the sort of the start of my, you know, taking photographs of musicians.
How cool is that?
And
Great
yeah,
shots, man. You're right there. Going back to the Jim Morrison shot, you're right there. You're right up against the stage. He's got the white denim jeans on. He's looking. Well, that's the thing. You capture that moment too. He's looking off. He's got that kind of like that vacant look on his face. Like, what's he thinking? He's looking off, staring off into the distance. He's in the pose, the Morrison pose. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. You have what they call a photographic eye, which you developed by studying and absorbing the way photographers whose work moved you framed their subjects. What are the things someone with a photographic eye can see that others don't?
well, I mean, I was a big fan of French films, and so when I would watch, something by Jean-Luc Godard or Francis Truffaut, or as well as I was a fan of film noir, and I would look at how they framed, the framing that they did, and particularly when they were doing close-ups on one of the actors. How are they framing them? How close are they getting to them? Just that kind of thing. But I also, there were all these photographers, some of whom were rock photographers, some of whom weren't, that I looked really closely at their work. I mean, I loved the work of Jim Marshall. I mean, he was like one of the biggest rock photographers there were back in the 60s and 70s. And in San Francisco, there was Herb Green, who photographed all of the San Francisco bands. And then, of course, Annie Leibovitz, who was Rolling Stone's chief photographer for many years. And before her, Baron Woolman. He was the first photographer for Rolling Stone. And there were a lot of other photographers. It just kind of goes on and on. But I would just really study their photographs and sort of, I just took in what I thought made for a good photograph in terms of the framing, in terms of kind of what you were looking for. And it's hard. I mean, I guess you could sort of break it down into specific elements, but it's sort of more of an intuitive thing. And it just seems like that was something that I had, when I was photographing someone, I would just kind of intuitively, based on what I had absorbed, get at a certain distance to them, where I put them in the frame, how close, just all these kinds of things. So I would also take a lot of photographs. I mean, back in the days of film, the most you could get was 36 photographs on a roll of film. But I would shoot 2 or 3 rolls, as many photographs in a way within reason as like when I was doing close, portraits, like backstage, or in a hotel room. If I had the opportunity, I would shoot, multiple rolls of film. And the more photos you take, the more chance that one of them is really going to click in the right way. And that happened many times. Yeah.
You talk about imperfectly perfect shots. You learned that from Robert Frank, the photographer Robert Frank, that great photos aren't always in sharp focus or even properly exposed. Can you expand on that? Is it more about capturing the emotion of the moment than worrying about perfection?
Yeah. Nowadays it's very different. I mean, you've got a digital camera. It has a very sophisticated autofocus, a very sophisticated light meter. built into it. Uh, you can, so these days, um, it's pretty hard to not get your photographs in focus and to get the exposure exactly right. But back in the time of Robert Frank and the 50s, the 60s, um, it was very different. You're using a film camera. Um, you're manually focusing that camera. You're trying to get this picture quickly. You don't always have time to make sure you've got the exposure right. Some photographers like Jim Marshall were just brilliant at that. I mean, they could manage to get everything just right. But a lot of people couldn't, including, I mean, I consider Robert Frank one of the great photographers. His book, The Americans, is unbelievably good. And so, in terms of this book, there are some photographs of Jerry Garcia, for example, where I was developing my own film, my own negatives back then. And when I took the Jerry Garcia photographs, which I took at his house in Larkspur when I was 17, I developed those negatives in my parents' garage, where I had this kind of funky darkroom set up, and some of those negatives got exposed a little weirdly, and so, but I thought that the photographs themselves, well, there's one in particular where there's just some strange stuff in the picture that's because of me developing it. And I think the film, two pieces of the film were touching each other. But I put that photograph into the book anyway, because I still thought it was like a really strong photograph of Garcia. And, and there's a photograph of Michael Bloomfield performing live, and it's not in perfectly sharp focus, but I think it really captures Michael Bloomfield when he was playing, what he looked like when he was on stage in a club playing. And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of imperfectly perfect. I mean, from a technical standpoint, not perfect, but from a soulful standpoint, I think perfect. So
yeah, and the Jerry Garcia photos are cool because it gives you an inside look at the Jerry Garcia, not on stage, but at home, just hanging out. If you could tell the story, because you did tell me this story when you were last on for your book, Addicted to Noise. This is 1970. What stands out to you about that experience, talking to Jerry at his house? You get this side of him.
The whole thing was kind of amazing because me and this other guy we were very good friends, and we had become friends with the son of the great disc jockey, record company president, producer, concert promoter, Tom Donahue, who Tom Donahue started underground FM rock radio at a station called KMPX in San Francisco. Before that, he was a major DJ on KYA, the top 40 station. So his son was in one of my classes. And so we went up, we were going to, this was during the summer. And my friend and I had decided we were going to try to start a Bay Area rock magazine, like a Bay Area version of Rolling Stone. So, and we were going to call it Hard Road, after a John Mayall Blues Brothers album, because our idea was that the musician's life, it's a hard road. It's tough. And so anyway, we're going to start this magazine. We're up on Mount Tamalpais, where Donahue's house is. Park the car. We start walk up, and who's standing at the top of the driveway but Jerry Garcia? And musicians would be coming up to Tom Donahue's house all the time. I mean, they wanted him to play their records. I mean, they, this was a big deal for them. So there's Jerry Garcia. And I went up to him and I said, we're starting this rock magazine and we would really like to interview you. Would you consent to doing an interview with us? And amazingly, he says yes.
I love that.
And he gives us his address in Larkspur and tells us, to come, gives us a date and a time to come. It's in the early evening. He wants us to show up, I don't know, 6:30. And, so
total free spirit, open-minded, not even concerned. Like, who is this kid? I love it. I mean, that's so Jerry.
This was such a different time, It's almost hard for people who weren't around then to appreciate how different things were, especially in the San Francisco Bay Area. So anyway, we show up at his house at the time when he wanted us, and I'm carrying like this, reel-to-reel tape recorder because they didn't have cassette tape recorders at that time. So I've got this reel-to-reel recorder I'm carrying, and I got a camera around my neck. And anyway, we knock on the door, and Mountain Girl, Jerry Garcia's, she became his wife, but she was his girlfriend at the time. As I'm pretty sure they weren't married yet. And she looks at us, we're like 17-year-old kids. And she's like, can I help you?
Can I help you?
What's going on here? And I said to her, well, Jerry Garcia gave us your address and told us to come at this time to do an interview with them for a magazine we're starting. And she said, well, that's kind of funny because he's about to leave to head over to Berkeley to play the Keystone Berkeley tonight. And I said, well, I don't know what to say, and she goes back and she comes back to the door and says, yeah, come on in. Jerry's going to talk to you. And so she brings us into their living room. And one of the things I remember is that the cover art from the first Grateful Dead album was up over the fireplace, like framed over the fireplace. And then I believe Robert Hunter was also hanging out there at that evening.
Jerry's lyricist.
And, yeah. And he might have even been living in that house at that point. But anyway, so Jerry does like, I don't know, 20, 30-minute interview with us. And while we're talking to him, I'm taking photographs of him. And then I also took photographs of him when we were finished with the interview, so I could get some shots where he was not having to be talking. He could stand up and actually look at me, and and it was like this amazing experience. I mean, Jerry Garcia was a big deal back then to us. The Grateful Dead weren't yet popular the way they became. They couldn't sell out stadiums back in 1970, but they could certainly sell out Winterland, which is holds 5,000 people in San Francisco, and other venues of that kind of size, especially in the Bay Area where they had a huge following from early on. And this was when we interviewed him, and I took the photographs, was right at the time when they were getting the material together and maybe even have started recording American Beauty, which I think is possibly the Grateful Dead's greatest album. So it was kind of cool that was when I got the photographs of him.
And then there's some photos of Jerry with the New Riders of the Purple Sage and Grateful Dead in there. Shots of Ron Pighead McKiernan, Phil Lesh, Mickey Hart, Bob Weir. When and where were those taken? Any memories to share of those? You're so close again. It's like you're on the stage.
Well, the thing was, those were obviously live shots, although the New Riders shots might have been taken during a rehearsal at the heliport in Sausalito, which is where, I can't remember for sure about that. It's so long ago, but I do know that, the heliport had rehearsal spaces where bands rehearsed. And I just have in my mind, I just seems to me that that might be where I took those particular pictures. But the pictures of Pigpen and the Dead performing, that was taken at this place in San Rafael.
Euphoria?
And
is that the one?
Yeah.
Euphoria was the name of the venue?
And, yeah. Well, the thing was, it was Euphoria, and then it became Pepperland. But when I took the pictures of the Dead, it was Euphoria. And then later I took some pictures like of Frank Zappa and some others, and it was Pepperland. But yeah, and the thing was, in terms of those, you could get right up to the stage, and then at that point I was using a Pentax 35 millimeter camera, and I think it was an 80 millimeter lens that I would use when I was taking concert shots. So if you got right up to the edge of the stage and you use an 80 millimeter lens, you could get shots where it's really close.
Jerry's playing. Looks like he's playing the steel pedal.
Well, that is probably from the New Riders.
Yes, Marin County, 1970.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
People need to get the book to see these photos, and we'll describe as best as we can. But a lot of times you put these photos up on the internet, and next thing you know, they're all over the internet without your permission. So that's why we would but get the book. Get the book. A lot of these are in black and white. Some are color. I don't know is that a conscious choice on your part? Are you looking for more black and white? Do you like that?
Well, the thing is, if you look at the history of photography, it was only in maybe the 80s where color became something that photographers who considered themselves were trying to do art were using. And the guy who's responsible for that, and I want to get this right, but it's William Eagleston is the photographer who they put some of his photographs, I think, in the New York Museum of Modern Art, Eagleston, and his color photographs. And that was what sort of made it okay to use color when you were taking your photographs. If you were aspiring to have your stuff in galleries and the like, and in books and galleries and stuff. And so the other thing was that you could develop black and white yourself. Developing color was a much more challenging process back at that time.
Okay.
But I was a huge fan of black and white photographers. I mean, everything Jim Marshall took was black and white. Everything that Herb Green took at that point in time was black and white. Annie Leibovitz stuff, all her stuff for Rolling Stone back in the late 60s was black and white. That was what everyone did. And and so I didn't really start using color until I had started using digital cameras.
Okay.
I mean, before that, everything was black and white.
How often, when you were assigned to do a story, were you combining your article and photos together? How often did that happen? A lot?
It happened a lot. I mean, this was before I was working at Rolling Stone. This was when my career was just starting. So I was writing freelance articles for the San Francisco Chronicle's Sunday Date Book section, which was their entertainment section. I was doing photographs for the Berkeley Barb, for the San Francisco Bay Guardian. And which, I mean, those, they weren't running any color photographs anyway. I mean, they were newspapers. And also a magazine called City of San Francisco Magazine. I did some of these for. And what basically they would give me an assignment to do the story. When I turned in the story, I would often turn in photographs as well.
Smart.
Because I would basically, I would tell the people that were arranging the interviews, I'd say, I'd like to take some photographs as well. Can you let the artist know that that's something that I'm planning to do? And back then, musicians were just very loose about everything. I mean, it wasn't like, it was just so different. I mean, like when I went, one of the first interviews, 1975, interviewed Frank Zappa in his hotel room at the Miyaku Hotel in San Francisco. And I was just told, come to his room is on, the fourth floor. This is the room number. I show up there. It's just Frank Zappa. There's no publicist. There's no one else.
No security, right? Just
nothing. No,
totally
no.
accessible.
And my future wife was doing stories with me at that time, and so we just showed up, and there was an official photographer from the Berkeley Barb there to photograph Zappa while we were doing the interview. But when the interview was over, I just said to him, I'd like to just get a few shots of you, and got some photographs that they're in the book, those portraits. And I love them. I think they turned out just fantastic. And Tom Waits backstage in his dressing room, there's no one else there. It was me, and then there was another reporter. And so the other reporter interviewed Waits, and I took photographs of him. And then the other reporter left, and then I interviewed him. And that's it. There's no manager. There's no one there but Tom Waits. We went out to Stinson Beach to Commander Cody's house that he was renting out there. Hung out with him, interviewed him, took photographs of him. It was just such a different time. That would just never happen like that now. And the other thing was, usually you could photograph at a club, you could just photograph for the whole set. These days, you're lucky to get 3 songs. But back then, no, you could just, and not only that, but like these days, they don't want you using flash. But back then, if you needed to use flash, you could. And people in the audience didn't always care for that, but it sure helped you to get some really good photographs.
When you say 3 songs, so what is that like? It's like an assigned, it's like a certain amount of time that you only have, and then you got to split and let the next photographer get.
No, it's like, okay, just think of an auditorium or a theater where a band is playing. And usually there's an area right in front of the stage, but there's a gap of maybe, 5 feet or something between the edge of the stage and where the audience is. And so in that area, they will let X amount of photographers go to photograph. It's people who have photo passes. So you have to have gotten a photo pass. Sometimes they have you sign something that says these photos can only be used for the publication that you got the assignment for. You can't use them in any other way. And so for the first 3 songs, you can take pictures, and then they get you out of there. The security get you out. They don't let you stay there. And that's it. Nobody is photographing for the rest of the show. And whereas back when I was taking photographs, doing a lot of photographs of live stuff, I could just be taking photographs the whole time. I
Yeah.
mean, the Sex Pistols. I was just right at the front of the stage taking pictures of the Sex Pistols during their entire set at Winterland in San Francisco. At the same thing at the clubs. You're just there. Iggy Pop is performing and you're there taking pictures. Lou Reed is performing. I mean, and so it allowed you to get, I mean, I think it allowed you to get much better photographs because you weren't confined to this three song thing where you just felt under pressure. I got to get the pictures, got to get a good picture in these 3 songs.
Tell me about the shows like Sex Pistols or Iggy Pop. Dangerous, a little rowdy. The crowd, I'm sure, at those days.
Well, the crowd for the Sex Pistols at Winterland. This was their last show before they disbanded. And then, of course, years later, they regrouped, for I think they called it the Filthy Lucre Tour.
Right.
But it was, they regrouped. I mean, how could the Sex Pistols regroup? I mean, their whole thing, Anarchy in the UK, I mean, all their songs, they weren't about a career as a rock band. But by the time they regrouped, they were. But back then, that was the last thing on their mind, I'm sure. And but it was pretty dangerous in the crowd at Winterland because all these like football player types from the suburbs had come there, like they, not because they cared about the Sex Pistols. They thought the Sex Pistols were a joke and they were just there to cause trouble. And so you'd have these big burly guys just ramming through the audience and just banging into people and knocking people over. And I mean, it was terrible.
Did you have any close calls? I mean, you get some big dude pushing you around.
Well, I was keeping an eye out for what was going on, but by the time, like, I was in the audience and I worked my way up right to the front of the stage. And so they weren't that close up. And so I didn't actually myself have a problem with that, but other people sure did. Yeah, and there was
Well, what about the Blondie show? I want to ask you about that too. Some amazing shots of Debbie Harry and Blondie, Oakland Civic Auditorium in Oakland, 1979. Some great expressions from Debbie Harry here. She has that sex appeal. It's like the natural sex appeal that you capture in these shots. What do you recall about that night?
Well, the other thing about these pictures of her is, there's some of them where she's smiling, but there's one, it's the 4th picture. And she's got this very serious expression. She's standing sort of sideways, looking out at the audience, and she's got the microphone in her hand, and it's got the microphone facing down. Like, this is a moment when the band is playing, an instrumental part of the song. And I just think it just captures this sort of cool that Deborah Harry, has, and certainly had back then.
I'm looking at it here now. Yeah. That's such a cool shot, man. Look it up. Yeah. Yeah. So she's at the edge of the stage there, it looks like.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, again, I'm sure I was shooting this with my 80 millimeter lens, so I could get a nice portrait of her, even though, I'm sure she was back further than she wasn't like necessarily right at the edge of the stage, but, I could get a nice portrait of her, being that I was at the front of the stage and I was using that lens. And when the New York scene, the punk scene started, it was really like 74, 75, 76 is when 75 really, I mean, and 74, because by 75, bands were getting record contracts. You know, Richard Hell and the Voidoids had a contract. Blondie got signed to an independent label. And the Ramones got signed to Sire Records, and Talking Heads got signed to Sire. Television got signed to Elektra.
All those CBGB bands.
That all happened in that was happening by 76, even by the end of 75, because Patti Smith's first album came out, as I recall, at the very end of 75. And so, but if you were on the West Coast, for most of these bands, you couldn't hear them. They weren't coming out here yet. They didn't have an audience out here. I mean, Patti Smith did come out here early. She played the Bay Area in 74. I saw her at the end of 75. But I learned about all these bands because I got a subscription to the Village Voice, which was the New York underground paper. And they were writing about all of these artists very early on. And writing about CBGBs.
Yeah.
So I was very excited to actually hear what these artists sounded like. And, of course, we didn't have the internet then. We didn't have YouTube then. I mean, so you could only hear artists if bootleg records came out, and they usually didn't come out at that point in time on artists that weren't already popular. But anyway, when Blondie's first album came out, I bought it and I loved it. So when they were coming out here to play live, I wanted to see them, and so I was really into it when I saw this show at the Oakland auditorium. I was totally into it.
You saw Springsteen on the 78 tour, with the E Street Band, which you say is arguably their best tour. Memories of that night? Winterland, they played.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing was, again, I would just work my way up to the front of the stage. And luckily, I'm 6 feet tall. So, I was above most of the people, I'm just tall enough above most of the people up there. And I could position myself so that I could get shots of an artist, and get really close up shots. And I mean, Springsteen was just at the top of his game, in my opinion, on that tour. That was
Darkness at the Edge of Town.
The Edge of Town. Yeah. Darkness at the Edge of Town had come out, and that's arguably his best album. I mean, now The River is also right up there, and Born to Run is right up there. I mean, those would be the three albums. So, he was at the top of his game. He was, performing great. Winterland was a good place to see artists. And yeah. And so I was there he played a few nights. I was there for one of those nights, but there's a live recording. I think that KSAN Radio broadcast one of the nights. And so there is a bootleg recording available of Springsteen in 78 at Winterland that people can get a hold of if they're interested.
That's cool.
And they will, if they're a Springsteen fan, they will love it.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, the Neil Young shots. One set of photos from 1973 from the Forum in Inglewood, and then others from 1978 from Boarding House in San Francisco. And Neil's got a totally different look, and the music was different, 73 and 78. So I'm curious as to get your thoughts on those two shows. There's an overhead shot of Neil from 73, which is really cool in the book.
Yeah, well, I was I was going to college back then, and uh, I was studying photography, and I was studying filmmaking, but I also got this idea that I could I could sell photographs that I took of rock stars at at their shows before before they performed or after they performed. And so I took some photographs. I remember I took some photographs of, I think I took some of Neil Young in Santa Cruz, and I brought some prints down, and I was trying to sell them before the show started. And as I recall, that didn't really work out very well. But the thing was, when Springsteen, I mean, it's not Springsteen, when Neil Young played Santa Cruz, he played, I think it's the Santa Cruz Civic Auditorium. I mean, it's a relatively small auditorium in Santa Cruz. And so you could get, again, you could get close. It maybe it, I mean, my recollection is it held maybe 3,000 people, something like that, as opposed to the Forum, which held a lot more people. It was trickier, but I mean, you really had to work to get up to the front at the Forum. So in terms of a concert, and he was playing all new material. This was like, you know, oh, what's his album? The really popular one with Heart of Gold.
Harvest.
Harvest.
Yeah.
Harvest had come out, was a huge hit for Neil. He was on the radio. So when he did this tour right after Harvest, he does essentially like half the set or more was brand new material. And it ended up, a live album was released with all this new material as a vinyl record, but for years and years and years, Neil would not put it out on CD. It finally came out on CD just a couple of years ago. But anyway, so the Santa Cruz set, I could really get into the music. And so when the at the Forum, I wasn't so focused on the music. I was focused on taking photographs of Neil and trying to get, I mean, I shot a lot of photographs of him, and managed to get, some that I think turned out really good. I mean, there's one of them that is across 2 pages of the book. And it's just, it's really in sharp focus, and it's a really cool picture of him. At the other show, which was a number of years later, that was at a small club called the Boarding House, which held maybe 500 people, 400, 500, something like that. And so you could get, if you went right up to the front of the stage, Neil was right there, and so I was able to get, I think some really nice photographs, close-up photographs of him. And that was essentially, that was an acoustic set. And that was, might have been, I can't remember now, I'd have to look, but it might have been after Comes a Time had come out.
You're right, Comes a Time. I looked it up. Yeah, I was looking that up before I set up the questions. I was looking that up. Comes a Time, yeah. And Time Fades Away is the live album that I think you were referring to.
Yes, that's the one.
That's the one.
I mean, I really like that album, and I think some of the songs on it are just terrific. But, Neil has his opinions about his music, and he took a long, long time before he finally let that come out on a CD.
It's just, I love the difference in the two between, 5 years, what a difference that makes. Because in 73, he's got like this funky pair of jeans with things like sewed on patches, and then in 78, he's got the short hair. Looks like he's almost wearing a suit, and that's so Neil Young. He's just unpredictable. You never know what he's going to do. And
yeah, but it was still in the years when he was making great albums, one after another. And that kept up for a while. And then, yeah, I mean, when he was really sort of peaking,
Then
you
the
know.
battles with the record label comes as we get to 79 or 80, I think.
Well, yeah, once he signed with Geffen. And so then that was a whole weird thing going on. And he was almost like, it seemed like, because they so much wanted him to do the Neil Young, quote unquote, Neil Young thing, he was purposefully not doing that,
I
you
love it.
know?
Yeah, that
And
album he made in the
that's
early
Neil
80s,
Young.
the what's the one he made in the 80s with all the synth songs on it?
Trans, I
Yes.
think it's Trans.
Yeah. I just Sirius XM just played one of the songs off of that album, and it's such a trip to listen to Neil on that album. Yeah, that's called Trans, 1983. Yeah, author, rock journalist, and photographer Michael Goldberg is here to talk about his latest book. It's called Jukebox, 1967 to 2023 Photographs. The Devo press conference, 1978. This is in San Fran. They are all in those classic outfits with the sunglasses, the square sunglasses, whatever those are, and they're all looking right at you. So I'm curious about this one. What stands out to you about that shot? Did you tell the guys,
Well,
over here, guys?
well, I must have, I must have done that, The thing was, though, about them, um, I was a huge fan of Devo. Like, at that point in time, the record companies were sending me advances of records. You'd get, the album was going to come out at such and such a time, but you might get an advance of it months earlier. And so I had interviewed them down in Elliot Roberts, who was, famously Neil Young's manager. He also became Devo's manager. And so when their debut album came out, before it came out, I flew down to LA and went to Elliot's office and interviewed all of the guys, all the Devo guys in his office, and did a story for a national magazine called New Times about Devo. I mean, I thought they were incredible. I mean, when I heard their first album, and before it had been released, I just thought, this is absolutely amazing. I mean, I hadn't heard anything like that before. Just their whole sound was so almost sort of robotic and just very unusual. I mean, the way they did the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction.
Yeah.
I mean, no one had ever played that song anywhere near like that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, subsequently, after the album was released, they're up in the Bay Area. They do a press conference. They knew me, because I had talked to them recently and done this story that had come out, and was a very positive story about them, sort of, introducing them to the world in a sense. And so yeah, I mean, I took a lot of photographs of them at the press conference, and there's others that are good as well, but I really liked this one because they did turn their heads and look right at me,
And those, they look like 3D sunglasses, like just those cheap 3D sunglasses you'd buy at a movie theater. I think that's what they are. And those helmets that they got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just crazy. I mean, they were just so smart and just so clever in terms of, the whole de-evolution stick. And I mean, boy, you look at what's going on in the world right now, and they predicted,
Yeah.
they predicted it.
Now, what about the Ramones shot at the Tropicana Motel, 1978? How do you end up at the hotel with the band?
Yeah, well, they were going to come up to San Francisco and perform in the Bay Area. And so I was doing stories, among the many places I was writing for back then. They were going to perform in the Bay Area, and I was going to do a story about them for the San Francisco Chronicle's Sunday Datebook section. That section could reach like as many as 2 million people. And so they were totally into doing an interview. I mean, I had interviewed them actually previously at least once. The first time they came to play in San Francisco, I talked to them. they played a small club the very first time called the Savoy Tivoli on Upper Grant Street in North Beach. But so this time I flew down to LA in advance and, interviewed them. And I think we actually did the interview in my room. And so when I took the photograph, it was, they were basically standing in the doorway of my hotel room when I got that shot.
It's a great shot.
They were cool. I mean, they were cool guys. I mean, later I kind of became friends with Joey Ramone years later when I was doing when I had founded the Addicted to Noise website, which was the first internet music magazine, web magazine. And so Joey Ramone ended up doing, we did a lot of sort of Ramones road reports where Jan Uhelski, who used to work for Cream and now does some stuff for the new Cream. Jan was doing stuff for my magazine Addicted to Noise back then. And so she would talk to Joey on the phone from the road and then, record him and then put together a road report from Joey Ramone. And then Joey would call me up and we would talk. So we kind of became friends. But that was much later. I mean, that was in the 90s. This picture was 1978, much earlier.
What a character. What an interesting guy, Joey Ramone.
Great guy.
For sure. The Who in 1970 at the Berkeley Community Theater. And there's one photo where he managed to capture Roger Daltrey, Keith Moon, and Pete Townsend all in action. Pete's leaping into the air, and then you got Keith. He's about to pound on the snare. He's got that look on his face, that intense look on his face. And then Roger, he it looks like he's about to swing the mic around like he famously does. More shots of that, like that, of Roger, Pete, and Keith. So for those of us who wish they could be at a 1970 Who concert, please tell us what that experience was like as a photographer and as a fan. How was that?
Well, the thing was, this was the summer that I did that Hard Road magazine that I was telling you about. And so I don't know, I'm trying to remember. I think, we were going to do that magazine, that first issue, when myself and some others, when we went to the Berkeley Community Theater. And the Berkeley Community Theater, I mean, it was amazing because it's a relatively small venue. I mean, it's maybe 3,000 people. Can you imagine seeing the Who, the original Who, in a 3,000 capacity theater?
What a trip.
It was absolutely fantastic. And by the way, Entwistle is in this shot too, just in the far left.
Okay.
So it's the whole band.
Yeah, you do capture the whole band. Yeah.
And I was really happy to get this shot. I have to tell you. I mean, I just was really happy because I just felt it captured the energy and the dynamics of the Who. I mean, Townsend was just incredible the way he would leap up in the air, and I mean, and he would land on his knees. I mean, I think he really messed up his knees ultimately, and he would also, he would end up breaking a guitar. I mean, it was crazy theatrics. But musically, they were just fantastic back then. I mean, you could, if you, the live album that came out back in that period of time gives you a sense of how great that band was when you saw them live.
Live at Leeds.
It's a great album, and Live at Leeds, and it's a great album, and it really does capture that. They did, they were doing some of the material from Tommy at this show. And I don't remember if Tommy had already come out or if it was about to come out, but I remember hearing some of those songs, and it was really cool to hear that stuff.
Amazing. Just an
Yeah, I
amazing
mean,
time to be able to be part of that whole scene when music was as powerful as it was at that time. 69, 70, you go back to 67 with the Doors. Just I envy you, man. That was a great period.
I was lucky to be, a teenager back then, and to be able to go to, I mean, and my parents were really cool. I mean, they were cool with me going to all kinds of shows. So yeah, so I mean, I'm 17, and me and my friends drive over to Berkeley. We lived in Marin County, but we drove to Berkeley and went to this show. And I from pretty early on, I was very gutsy. I mean, the Berkeley Community Theater is a seated theater. Everyone has an assigned seat, but I would like sneak up in the aisle, up as close as I could get to the stage, and take pictures. And so that's how I was able to get these close-up shots, because there was no way I could have done that from where we were sitting. And they didn't have, I mean, eventually someone from security might come up to you and say, hey, you got to go back to your seat. But it wasn't like now. You could never do that. First of all, I mean, you'd only have your cell phone. You could never get a real camera in, unless you were a staff photographer for someone. And on top of that, you'd get the first 3 songs, and that would be it. But when I didn't have any photo pass or anything back then, at that point. I was a high school kid, and
Yeah.
we were just, I mean, it's one thing, Jerry Garcia believed us that we were going to do this magazine, but you tell anybody, any sort of authority person, at a theater or a promoter or whatever, they're like, well, you're a kid. What are you talking about? You're going to do a magazine? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. The Stones in 75, you got great shots of that show. And then there's one of an outdoor stadium, and the caption reads, Once Upon a Time Rock Was King, Spartan Stadium, San Jose, 1978. Was that a Stone show too?
That wasn't a Stone show. Um, that, God, I'm not sure who was playing for that one. I was trying to figure it out, but I thought it was a good shot to show, the sort of the packed stadium.
Right.
So to,
Right. I should describe it for the listeners. Yeah, it's huge. It looks like it could very well be a Stone show because it's a huge stage, and it's got quite a setup there. I don't know how you describe it, but yeah, it looks like it's definitely a major act. So I'm thinking 78 maybe it was the Stones, but okay, I was curious. You're not sure.
well, I don't think it was the Stones. I don't think they played there. Um, in 75, the Stones played the Cow Palace, and that's where my shots of the Stones, including the cover of the book, um, were taken. And the thing was, again, well, you could get close up in the Cow Palace. You could work your way up to the stage. You could also, there was an upper level at the Cow Palace where there were seats, and you could go all the way right behind the stage. And um, so you could also shoot, from kind of behind the band. And so if they turned around, then you could get a shot, you know. Um, but yeah, it was the Stones, and then the Meters, the New Orleans band, the Meters, were opening for the Stones. And I was a huge fan of the Meters, and I had photographed the Meters. There's some photos of them in here that were taken when they were in the recording studio in San Francisco. And they ended up becoming, well, some of them, they were the Neville brothers later.
Right.
People probably know the Neville brothers better. They also know Aaron Neville, who had a hit single himself back, I don't know, early 60s, maybe something like that. But yeah, so the Stones were big fans of the Meters, and so they had the Meters. The Meters were like a New Orleans Booker T and the MGs. They were an mostly instrumental band. Not always. They ended up having some singing as well, but it was their instrumental playing, and they backed up a lot of different people like Alan Toussaint and other New Orleans musicians. The Meters would be the backing band. They were a very cool band.
Van Morrison at the old Waldorf in San Francisco, 1978. He doesn't look too happy on stage, but I don't think I've ever seen Van Morrison smiling. And I remember this story about when you interviewed him, right? Was he pulled up in the driveway, he sees you, and then he peels out?
No. He
you were scheduled to interview the guy, and I think like he just didn't want to talk to you.
No. What happened? Okay, what happened was, first I meet him at this restaurant in Mill Valley, and he does show up because he needs to have a story in the Chronicle Sunday Date book, because he's going to play a big facility in the Bay Area.
So he needs to plug the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first he shows up, and we do this interview, and he's just the most difficult interview. I mean, he doesn't really, he doesn't consider what he does rock and roll. He doesn't like to look back and talk about what he's done in the past. He's just like, every question, he'll just, you ask him a question and he goes, pass. Then you ask him another question, and then he will. I mean, I got enough stuff from him so that I had him, I was able to do a piece for Rolling Stone. But the thing was, at a certain point, he cuts off the interview and he says, let's finish this up next week. And he tells me to come to his house, such and such a day, such and such a time. And I get there and he's not there. I knock on his door, no answer. Well, he has this front, like, you pull up and there's a garage and a little parking area. This is on Mount Tamalpais. And then sort of below where the parking area is like a yard, a big yard. And there's some chairs there. And then his house is sort of next to that. And so after I knock on the door and realize he's not there, I walk into the garden area and just take a seat. And I mean, it's really beautiful there. I mean, there's deer, there's birds and butterflies, hummingbirds, and just a beautiful scene. And I'm just quiet. I just kind of hang out there, and I don't know, a half hour, I don't remember now. I was there for a while. And eventually he pulls up into his driveway. He gets out of his car and he looks down and he sees me. And I've already gotten up and started walking up. And so I get up to where he's pulled in, and he's starting to get back in his car. I'm saying, Van, we're supposed to finish up this interview. Come on, man. And, something to that effect. And he's like, well, we can't do it today. Call me, call me. And he gets in the car and takes off. And
thanks a lot,
so
man.
I called him, and I mean, I don't get him. I get his message machine. I leave messages, but I didn't, that was it. We did not. So I had to write my stories based on, part one of the interview, because there wasn't a part two.
My older brother was just telling me about a time he went and saw Van Morrison. It was like a 40-minute show, and he just decided, that's it, I'm done. And everybody in the crowd was like, what the hell, man? Okay, I get no encore. That's it, I'm done. Yeah.
But the thing that was cool about Van Morrison was he was living in the Bay Area for quite a while. And while he was living there, he would do these, sometimes they'd be announced, but sometimes they were pretty unannounced shows. Like, somehow like the radio station KSAN would get word maybe, and so they would say, hey, we understand Van Morrison might show up at the Inn of the Beginning tonight, or might be at the Lion Share tonight. These were different clubs. And so, I mean, I saw him at the Lion Share one time. I saw him at the Inn of the Beginning at least once, if not twice. The Great American Music Hall one night. I saw him at Winterland, a great set at Winterland one time. A lot of different shows. And overall, he was great almost pretty much every time. He was really good.
Brilliant artist, yeah, for sure.
But he could do that, The size he's done, 40 minutes, that's it,
I just read a story about a song he wrote that he gave to Sammy Hagar, and I think maybe they were on the same label, but it's called Flamingos Fly, and then Sammy put it on his 1976 solo album 9 on a 10 scale. And I guess he met Van at a story or at a party or at the record plant or something. So Van gives him the song, and then they're just thinking, oh, cool, maybe Van, maybe you want to, sing on the song with Sammy. No, not interested. Okay, thanks, Van. It's just, yeah, he's so unpredictable, man. He's one of a kind. Alice Cooper, his struggles with alcohol, well documented, and he's been clean and sober for a long time. But you took photos of him in '73. There's one on stage with the snake around his neck, but there's another one where he's pouring himself a drink, and I think this is backstage. So is there a story behind this photo that you can share? He's got some funky pants on too.
Well, the thing was, I mean, I was a huge, Alice Cooper fan from when I'm 18 happened. When that was on the radio, I already had a couple of his albums because he had done 2 albums for, I guess, for Frank Zappa's Straight label, which Herb Cohen had created a couple of labels, Bizarre and Straight for Zappa, and Zappa was signing artists, and Alice Cooper did 2 albums for, I think it was Straight, but then he signed to Warner Brothers for the album that had I'm 18, and I became a big fan at that point. And so this tour was the $1 Billion Babies tour, and so I saw him play. Can't remember, maybe in the Bay Area first, and then he was going to play in Arizona, and so I had this idea that I was going to drive to Arizona to where this auditorium was, and I think it was Tucson is where this one is.
Yeah, he's from Arizona too, right? He's from.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Tucson Convention Center. So I drive to the Tucson Convention Center in this sports car that I had somehow managed to. I'd spent my money I was supposed to spend on room and board for college. I dropped out of college, and so I spent the money on this sports car, and so I drove the sports car to the Tucson Convention Center, and I get there in the kind of late afternoon, and I go to the backstage entrance, and there's a security guard there, and I say, I'm a photographer. I need to get a backstage pass for tonight. And he says, well, you need to talk to, his road manager, because we can't just give you a photo pass, but I'll tell you, they're staying at such and such a hotel that's, just down the road. So, you go there and the road manager is such and such, and maybe you'll get your photo pass. So I go to the hotel, and I had brought along a whole bunch of slides that I had taken of Alice Cooper at this previous show that I had gone to, just from the audience. And so I showed him some of the slides. I mean, I found the room that the road manager was in, and I told him who I was, and want to take some pictures tonight. Look at these things, and so he liked some of the pictures. So he gives me a a photo pass, and not only that, he get in a backstage pass, and also I get to sort of hang out with some of the people in the Cooper band at the hotel. So there's one photograph that's here, which is of what's
Pouring a
his name?
drink. Dennis Dunaway. Dennis Dunaway, yeah, bass player.
And that's at the hotel, in his hotel room, and I really like that shot. And then I took these pictures backstage of Alice Cooper. I mean, there's 3 of them that were taken backstage, and yeah, they just let me hang out back there and take pictures. I mean, and he didn't care. And I took a roll of slides. I took a roll of black and white back there, and then they also let me be on the stage during the set. And so I was like sort of behind some of their, like there was the drum risers and stuff. There was just places where you could be where the audience couldn't see you, but you could take pictures. And so that's when I took that picture of Alice and the Snake.
Yeah, that's a great shot.
And but it was just, I mean, I was 19 at that point, and it was just one of these things where I was just this really, gutsy kid, and I would just push things as far as I could push them. I mean, I remember this is crazy. It doesn't really have to do with photographs here, but I would show up at the Fillmore in San Francisco, the Fillmore West, and I would bring a guitar along in a case. And I would show up with this case, and I would just walk right in the front door. And I would just say, yeah, I got to take this backstage. And they would let me walk in, and I would just walk right in. I knew where the backstage was. I'd just walk back there and into the backstage area. And then once I was back there, then I would just kind of sit on a couch or something and just kind of just be there and not.
That is great.
Just hang out. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I did.
That's what makes you a great rock journalist. Yeah, I'm with the band. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, what were you saying?
I'm with the band. Yeah, go ahead, kid. You're all set. This shot of Alice, he's pouring a drink. I mean, was he hitting him hard? Do you recall? He was a pretty heavy drinker in those days.
I mean, I was not focusing on that. I mean, it just, I was trying to get good portraits of him, and that one, I thought that turned out to be a really good photograph of him.
That's a great shot.
I mean,
yeah, that's cool.
I like this, I like the close up of him, the color close up of him as well. I mean, I think that is a strong photo too.
That is. That's a real. That's actually. I'm surprised. Boy, that's one they could make a poster out of or use in an album. Look at the size of that snake, man. Thing's huge.
Yeah, that's just crazy. Just crazy.
Yeah, he's got that look on his face, that menacing look on his face with the eye makeup. Yeah,
I mean, he was a great performer back then, and he had a lot of really strong songs. There's like at least 3 albums, starting with the one with I'm 18, that there's just tons of great songs on those 3 albums.
The Bob Ezrin produced albums.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Well, you're looking at this shot and you speak highly of this. Do you have a favorite photo from the book? One that really you say I'm most proud of? Maybe it's the Jim Morrison one. It's your first.
It's not like there's just one photo that, I mean, I included these photos. I mean, I have a lot more photos that I took, but I included these photos because I felt they were, I felt like each one of them was a really strong photograph. And I wanted, my idea was that each photo should stand on its own like if you weren't a fan of these particular musicians, but you liked the good photography, that these photographs would stand up to that. And that's, I mean, I'm sure that not every single photo that's the case with, but I feel like most of them, I feel like that is the case. And
What led to your decision to use Mick Jagger for the cover? That's a really cool shot of him up close.
Well, I mean, I actually I was thinking of using something else, and then it got down to it. We needed something, a different photo, and so I just thought it was a really cool photograph of him, and close up, like where it was just his head. I thought it's an unusual photograph because of the way his hair is falling. It's a side view
Profile,
of him.
Yeah.
He's
the Mick lips. You see those lips.
I felt like it sort of showed him in a little bit different light than we usually see. And I thought it made for a really strong cover. And I like the idea that the front of the book has Mick Jagger, one of the best known rock stars there's ever been. And then the back of the cover is a photograph of Frankie Fix from a San Francisco punk band called Crime, that probably no one has ever heard of. And so I really liked the juxtaposition of that. And the book really mixes it up in terms of, I mean, you have people like, Jim Morrison and Van Morrison and the Stones and the Who and Alice Cooper and Frank Zappa, people, artists that people really know. Emmylou Harris,
Muddy Waters is in there. Yeah, great shots of Muddy Waters.
But then it has artists that people don't know so well, like the Avengers, like Crime, like the Dills, like a bunch of artists from the San Francisco punk scene.
Captured that scene.
So it's really eclectic. I mean, it's George Clinton. It's got George Clinton, and then it's got this guy who was the auto harp player with Rocky Erickson, who was in the 13th Floor Elevators, who had the hit "You're Gonna Miss Me." I mean, I just thought it was a cool picture of that guy, and so I wanted to include it. From Jerry Garcia to Phil Alvin of the Blasters. I mean, it's really very eclectic. But artists that I dig.
Joel Selvin did the foreword, and I had Joel on the show recently to talk about that book he did on Jim Gordon. Have you read his book on Jim Gordon? Did you read it?
I haven't read it, but I know about it. I'm wanting to read it.
Must read. And Joel's a great guest. Had him on recently. So do you know Joel well? How did you get him to do the foreword for the book?
I have known Joel since probably 1974, when I was working at the Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle, as a copy person. I was, I don't know, 20 years old or something like that, 21, I don't know. And Joel was the rock critic at the Chronicle, and he was fairly young too back then. He's a little older than me, but not much. And so we met back then, and I was, I wanted to get into the Chronicle. I wanted to write about, rock for the Chronicle. And eventually I started doing that for the Sunday Chronicle. But I don't know if this is true. Back then I felt like, Joel didn't have time for me. Who's this copy boy who he's got these aspirations, and I don't know. He might have later, I don't know. But anyway, then as time went on, we became friends, and then later still, when I started working for Rolling Stone, and we knew each other, and then I started Addicted to Noise, and for a while Joel was writing book reviews for Addicted to Noise, and and so anyway, by the time I started doing like with the Wilsey book, Joel gave me a blurb for the back cover of the Wilsey book, which was really nice of him, and then I asked him if he would write the forward to this book. I sent him a bunch of the photographs so he could see what was going to be in it, and and he was really, I mean, he had no idea really that I was a photographer. I mean, even though some of my pictures had been with articles in the Sunday Date book, I don't think he was really paying attention to that, back then. And so he was really surprised, one, that I was a photographer, too, and then as well, that the photographs were strong. And so yeah, he was up for doing the forward, and I'm really glad that he did it, because
yeah, he's another really fantastic writer like yourself. Yeah, this is what he leads with. Michael Goldberg has always been avid. That is his superpower. That's what he leads with. Yeah, and then he finishes with, these photos come from a time when rock lived in its own world. Mass media paid little attention to the comings and going of the field. And if you wanted photographs, you had to be there to take them. Goldberg was. There you go.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah,
very nice.
Yeah. So, okay, so the book now is coming out later this month, you say, right? So people should go.
Yeah, end of July.
Website. End of July.
It's HOZAC.com.
Okay.
I think that's the URL.
I'm looking at here at HOZACrecords.com. Is it Hozac?
Okay, Hozac. Okay, I'm wrong. HOZACrecords.com. And if you go there, you'll see the book it's on the front page of there. If you just scroll down a little, you'll see there's a hardback and there's a paperback, and the hardback is very limited edition. There's only going to be 150 of them. They've already sold like a third of those. There's like 99 of those left. The paperback, there's going to be, I think, 500 of those, and they'll reprint the paperback. So it's not like we're gonna run out of paperback copies. But anyone who wants a hardback should go and check it out. And there's a number of photographs on the Hozac site, so you can get a little bit idea what the photos are like from there. And that's going to be the cheapest place to get the book, just because you're buying directly from the publisher. And if you end up buying from Amazon, it'll cost you a little bit more. So anyway, that's so if you want to get it, that's where you ought to go.
I'll put the link to it on the show notes.
If people go to my Facebook page, for example, they'll find some, they scroll down, they'll find some blurbs about it, with links to the Hozac site, and some info. And there's a list of like a whole bunch of the artists that are in the book, and most of these photographs have not been seen before. I mean, some of them have been seen in a very limited way, like they, like the Chronicle would like take the picture of Ramblin' Jack Elliott and just crop it to his face and run his face, really tiny as part of the story, the story. So nobody ever saw the full picture. And with this book, the book is 10 inches by 9 inches. And for most of the photographs, it's one photograph per page. So they're really a nice size. And
Yeah, beautifully laid
Yeah.
out.
I mean,
Yep.
I'm really very proud of the book.
Yep.
Yeah.
So late July, it's out. HozakRecords.com. I'll put a link to that in the show notes page so people can check that out
And
and pre-order it. They can pre-order it now, so when it's ready, it'll be sent.
yeah, I mean, if you pre-order it, they'll mail it out like the day they get the books in.
Right.
They'll start put them in the mail. Um, Hozak is really good about that.
Cool. All right, Michael. Thank you again. It was great to have you on. And visit number 4 coming. Who knows? We'll see. Stay tuned. Anything planned? Any books planned?
We'll see.
Yeah.
No, the other thing I'm doing right now, which is actually kind of concurrent with this book coming out, is I've curated a show in San Francisco for your San Francisco listeners on the San Francisco punk scene of the late 70s. And it's called We Are the One, San Francisco punk 1970s and 1980s. And that show is at the Haight Street Arts Center, and it's going to run from July 25th through September 22nd. And there's going to be an opening party from 6 to 9 on August 2nd. And it's going to be a really cool show. I've got some of the best photographers, San Francisco photographers who were covering the punk scene in the late 70s, have contributed photographs. We have over 150 photographs, including some of mine. And concurrent with that, I'm going to have about 36 or so of my photographs from this book will be exhibited in another gallery that's at the Haight Center. So, you know, if you're in San Francisco or during that time, check it out. I think you'll find it. You'll dig it.
Yeah. Sounds like an awesome time. All right, Michael. Thank you so much for being on, and best of luck with the new book. I'm sure people are going to love it, and look forward to having you back on again sometime down the road.
Thank you very much.